Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IS English. In our today's video, we'll talk about the heaviest ever launch done by the Indian Space Agency ISRO. Why it is big, how it fits into the future schemes of things, that is what we are going to understand in our today's video. Now the notes which I will be using in our today's session, in case if you want to download them, you can go to a particular Telegram channel called as ATS Live, and while you're in this channel downloading the notes, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel also, right? So let us start by understanding what happened today in the early morning at about 8 a.m. in the morning, right? Now ISRO, India's Space Research Organization, used its LVM3 launch vehicle, also called as GSLV Mark III launch vehicle, to launch its heaviest ever satellite. This satellite is a Bluebird Block 2 satellite, basically an American satellite which weighs about 6,100 kilograms. Now you need to understand this is the largest ever communication satellite ever to be put in a low Earth orbit. And low Earth orbit is an orbit which is about 1,000 kilometers up from the surface of the Earth. So, right, these are the satellites which are put into the low Earth orbit. Now, what you have to realize, this Bluebird Block 2 satellite is a communication satellite made by a private company known as AST Space Mobile, and it is a direct-to-mobile connectivity satellite. Usually, the communication satellites which are placed higher up in the space, that is in the geosynchronous orbit, they relay the radio waves or the mobile signals to a ground station, and this is from this ground station where our mobiles get connected through internet or through mobile signals. But this satellite is a direct-to-mobile connectivity satellite, which means this satellite would be able to directly communicate with our wireless handheld devices like mobile phones, and it enables provision of 4G and 5G voice and mobile services anywhere to everyone and at all times on the Earth. So this is the significance about this satellite. But in our today's video, we are not going to cover about the satellite. Rather than that, we are going to talk about the launch vehicle which was used to launch this satellite, LVM3, also called as GSLV Mark III satellite. Now LVM3 is one of the most successful satellites of ISRO, which has been able to put all the 8 satellites which it has launched successfully into the space. Now, this was the very launch vehicle which was used to put Chandrayaan 2, Chandrayaan 3 into the space, and also satellites of ISRO like GSAT 19 and GSAT 29 into the space. Comparison to its older cousin, that is the GSLV Mark II, which was relatively less successful as compared to GSLV Mark III or LVM3, because GSLV 2 was able to put 4 out of 18 satellites. It was not able to put 4 out of 18 satellites into the space. So that is why comparison to GSLV Mark II, LVM3 is much more successful. It has a 100% hit rate as compared to GSLV Mark II. Now, what you need to understand, initially the ISRO's plan was to have 2 separate launch vehicles. First was its workhorse called as Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, PSLV, which originally was intended to put polar and low Earth observation satellite like remote sensing satellites very much closer to the Earth's surface, particularly in the low Earth orbit. As far as heavier satellites were concerned, which were to be put higher up in the air, that is in the geosynchronous orbit, ISRO had developed GSLV and its variant GSLV-2 and GSLV Mark III to launch heavier satellites and much higher into the space. So this was the original plan of ISRO, and that is why the naming of these 2 satellites were done in a similar manner. Polar satellite launch vehicles for satellites put in low Earth orbit, and geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle for heavier satellites put much higher up into the space in the geosynchronous orbits. Now what happened in the year 2022 was that Russia and Ukraine were involved in the war. Now at that time, a American company, not American company, a Western company, OneWeb, wanted several of its satellites to be put into the air. So naturally they approached Russians for it, and Russians said no. So that is why OneWeb now approached ISRO, that they had a payload of 72 satellites which they wanted to be sent into space into 2 separate missions. So they contacted ISRO, will they be able to send satellites? Now ISRO, being Indian, they never said no, and they said that yes, we are going to use the GSLV GSLV Mark III to launch these vehicles into the low Earth orbit. So you can realize there was a discrepancy. GSLV originally was intended to put heavier satellites much higher up into the space, but now this GSLV would be used to put up heavier satellites but very near to the Earth's surface, that is in the low Earth orbit. And that is why ISRO changed the name of this satellite from GSLV Mark III to LVM3, which it is known correctly. Now during these two missions, what you need to know, the rocket did carry heavier payload once, which was more than 5,700 kilograms each, and this was put in low Earth orbit of around 450 kilometers. So that is why the name of this satellite launch vehicle was changed from GSLV Mark III to LVM3, which it is known currently. Now what you have to realize, today's event, it sent a 6,100 kilogram satellite into the low Earth orbit, and this was the heaviest ever payload ever carried by ISRO. Before that was the 5,700 kilogram worth of payloads which it sent using the OneWeb satellites. Now last month itself, the ISRO broke its own record by sending a CMS-3 satellite of ISRO itself, which weighted about 4,410 kilograms into much higher geosynchronous transfer orbit, and this was sent due to multiple modifications that ISRO had done. Now what you need to understand, LVM3 or GSLV Mark III, which it was known previously, it is a 3-stage launch vehicle, right? 3-stage launch vehicle means it uses a combination of solid fuel in the first stage, it uses liquid fuel in the second stage, and it uses a cryogenic fuel based cryogenic engine to power its ultimate and the third stage of its rocket. Now using this capability, LVM3 is able to launch about 8,000 kilograms worth of payload in the low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit, as I have told you, is an orbit where about 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers from the Earth's surface. As far as geosynchronous orbit is concerned, the LVM3 is able to put about 4,000 kilograms worth of payload in the geosynchronous orbit. And as I told you, last month itself, ISRO was able to send about 4,410 kilograms worth of payload. That was the CMS-3 satellite of ISRO itself. So now you can understand how is ISRO able to send an heavier payload as compared to the original capacity, right? This is because of the fact ISRO has done certain modifications. Why this modification was needed? You need to understand, previously ISRO had many heavier satellites which was much heavier in capacity as compared to the payload capacity of LVM3. So to send these satellites, ISRO hired the services of foreign space agencies like Arianespace, which is a French company, whose services was used to launch a 5,800 kilograms of payload of GSAT-11, and GSAT-24, which had more than 4,000 kilograms worth of payload. As far as to send GSAT-20 satellite is concerned, ISRO used the services of American SpaceX company, which is the same company owned by Elon Musk. So in that case, you can understand the dependency of ISRO was on foreign satellite companies or launch vehicle companies in order to launch heavier satellites. But now, with certain modification that it has done to the GSLV Mark III or LVM3, it is now able to launch heavier satellites like CMS-03 to space, which is much beyond the original capacity of LVM3. And this working on the capacity, this working on the modification on the part of ISRO is done specially because in future ISRO wants to send much heavier payloads into space. It wants to send Chandrayaan-4, it wants to send Mangal-2, it wants to send Gaganyaan mission, and it also wants to send a probe into the atmosphere, which is the Bharat atmospheric or Bharat space station. So to send those heavier payloads, ISRO has done certain modifications to LVM3. What are those modifications? Let us cover them one by one. First modification that was done to the LVM3 launch vehicle was in its third cryogenic stage of the fuel, right? Now, one of the modification that was done is to increase the thrust of the cryogenic engine. You need to understand the third stage of this LVM3 uses the cryogenic engine, which is powered by liquefied gases like oxygen and hydrogen, which operate at sub-zero temperatures. Here sub-zero temperatures means minus 150 to minus 250 degrees centigrades. Now the modification that was done was to an existing C25 stage. Presently the C25 stages currently covers currently it carries around 28,000 kilograms of propellant, which is able to provide about 20 tons worth of thrust, 20 tons worth of power to this cryogenic thrust stage. But with the new modification that will be done on the C32 stage, now this would carry much higher propellants, that is 32 kilograms worth of fuel, and this heavier fuel would be able to carry or give 22 tons worth of thrust. So this is the primary reason the third stage would have more power, and that is why, because of this more power, it will be able to carry heavier payloads or heavier satellites. Now the second modification that will be done by ISRO on the LVM3 was to, or will be on the second stage of the fuel, right? I told you the second stage of LVM3 currently is powered by a liquid engine. So ISRO is planning to modify this liquid engine and turn it into a semi-cryogenic engine. Now, as I told you, cryogenic engine is an engine which uses liquefied gases like oxygen and hydrogen at sub-zero temperature, which gives it much higher amount of thrust per fuel. Now, a semi-cryogenic engine would be a half cryogenic engine. Half cryogenic engine would mean that it will carry a liquid propellant, and this would be combined with a liquefied gas like oxygen. And liquid propellant here would be a refined kerosene. So the byproduct of this modification, that is introduction of a semi-cryogenic stage in the second stage of the LVM3, would ensure that it is able to carry more payload, and the cost because of using refined kerosene would also be cheaper as compared to other liquid propellants. So this is the second modification. Now pay very close attention to the third modification, right? I told you earlier GSLV was meant to send heavier satellites at one go much higher up into the space, that is in geosynchronous orbit, right? Now one of the good aspect about sending a heavier payload much higher up into the space, that you carry just one satellite which you have to deposit in the necessary orbit. But when you carry much heavier payloads into low Earth orbit, this also means that you might be carrying more than one payload. Now, when you have to deposit more than one payload into different orbits, the engine or the cryogenic engine needs to have the ability to start and stop multiple times. Now, whenever an engine is stopped, it needs to be reignited. So, for this reignition purposes, the cryogenic engine used by ISRO, it carries a secondary or an external gas presently, which is helium. Now, when you carry multiple gases or multiple fuels, it obviously adds to the weight of the launch vehicle, and when weight of the launch vehicle is high, it necessarily means that the payload you are able to carry would be less. Now, what is ISRO doing right now? It is developing a bootstrap reignition engine, which means this engine would have the ability to start and stop on its own without needing an external gas. So then it would mean that the weight of the launch vehicle would reduce, and this would mean the amount of payload now it will be able to carry because it is not carrying the helium would increase. So this is the third modification ISRO is wanting to do to its LVM3. Now, the impact of these modifications would be that ISRO or LVM3 would be able to carry much heavier payload, around 10,000 kilogram, into the low Earth orbit, which would mean much higher than the present payload it carries. Similarly, it also means that this increased capability now will be used by ISRO to deposit the first and the lightest module of the Bharatiya Antariksh Station. But does this mean that every future needs of ISRO will be catered by this modified LVM3? The answer is no. And knowing this very well, the ISRO is also developing a higher capability, much more powerful launch vehicle called as Lunar Module Launch Vehicle. And you'll be surprised to know this lunar launch vehicle would be able to carry 80,000 worth of payload into low Earth orbit, much higher than the 10,000 kilogram the modified LVM3 is able to carry now. So this is why, taking into account the future space needs of India, the ISRO is making a change, and this change is developing of a new altogether a launch vehicle called as Lunar Module Launch Vehicle, which will be able to carry about 8 times more amount of payload into the low Earth orbit. So this is what I wanted to discuss in our today's video. Now, before we get into a PYQ of UPSC which exactly occurred on the topics which we covered today, we need to discuss a very few important things. First of all, Christmas sale is ongoing right now, which would continue till 27th of December. And if you take admissions on 25th of December, there are few surprising gifts which are waiting for you. What are these surprising gifts? If you take admissions on any course of StudyIQ, on 25th of December, which are more than 10,000 rupees in payment, you will get surprise gifts. These gifts include iPhone, these gifts include earphones, smartwatches, as well as a tablet, right? So you will get one of these gifts in an assured manner if you take admissions on the Christmas day, that is 25th of December, on any course which is equal to or more than 10,000 Indian rupees. And if you apply the code ATS Live, you will get maximum discounts on all the courses, be it course for 2027, be it a course for 2028, or even optional subject, right? And this offer that I told you, in addition to the 50% off, you'll get assured gifts, and you'll get it when? On 25th of December. So please do not forget to use this code, because you learn to thrive by using the code ATS Live. And this is the question I talked to you about. This is a question which appeared in the UPSC exam in 2018, which reference to India satellite launch vehicles. Consider the following statements, and you have to tell me the correct statement in the comment section, right? So please do let me know the correct answer of this question in the comment section. The ones who get it right would get a thumbs up from my side. And to end, this is where you'd find the notes. The channel is called as ATS Live, and if you have problems in locating this channel, you can always scan this QR code to locate the same. So this is all from my side. Please have a very good night, and wish you all a very happy and a Merry Christmas.